return, we not only, as some people say, we dream about right of return. No. We actually plan for the right of return. And return, we will.
Welcome to This is Palestine. I'm Diana Buttu. In today's episode, we will hear from Dr. Salman Abu Sitta, the founder and president of the Palestine Land Society. Dr. Abu Sitta will talk to us today about his life in Palestine before the Nakba, his experience during the Nakba, and his since 40 years of work documenting Palestinian land and mapping out the right of return. So welcome, Dr. Salman Abu Sitta. It's really a pleasure to have you here on the This is Palestine podcast. And I really want our listeners to understand and to hear your memories of Palestine before the Nakba, and of course your memories of the Nakba itself. So if you would like to share some of your thoughts, we would be most grateful.
Thank you, Diana. It's a pleasure to be with you. And also, it's a painful pleasure to talk about a Nakba, which by any standards is the biggest strategy in Palestine's 4,000-year history. It is nothing like any colonial project. It is unique, and it is continuous, and it's deliberate, and it is remaining the major case in the world issues of today. I was born in 1937 in Al-Ma'in, or Al-Ma'in Abu Sitta, which is a village just east of Khan Yunis in Gaza. It is actually in Beersheba district, but it is administratively related to Gaza. And Al-Ma'in Abu Sitta, that's the name of the village, referring to my family as shown in Alimbi maps. I barely remember 1936. I was a student in Beersheba boarding school in the town of Beersheba. But in early April, that is me, myself, and two boys, had to go home to our families who were 45 meters away from the school. They intercepted roads and shot people with machine guns. We were afraid how to reach home. So we walked on foot in the fields for about 40 or 50 kilometers till I arrived to my home. And I was so tired, of course, and my mother put me in bed for 2 days, resting. Now, that date, it turned out to be later, is a very important date in the history of Nakba, because that was the date when Ben-Gurion unleashed the Haganah in Plan Dalet. The proper name of Plan Dalet is really the Zionist invasion of Palestine. Why is it so? Now we know, at the time we didn't, of course, that by mid-March 1948, the United Nations dropped the partition plan, and the United States also agreed with it in favor of trusteeship over Palestine. And so Ben-Gurion was hanging his legal justification on the partition plan, and it's gone. Imagine this happens when there was nothing called State of Israel. There was no State of Israel at the time. And this happens when Palestinians were under the protection of the British Mandate Authority. The army, British army, was filling all of Palestine. They did not interfere. So this is truly the invasion of Palestine by the Zionists. It is not, as the Zionists claim, the Arab invasion of Palestine after 15 May 1948. And when you discuss that in detail now, you will find the largest number of massacres have taken place in this period. And of course, we lost many of our main cities in this period. And when you examine the predominance of massacres, which I'm now studying now in detail, you will see that massacres were a weapon of ethnic cleansing. But all this is something we studied in the decades after that.
It sounds, now we're in 2020, where this seems so remote, 72 years ago, and yet it sounds so alive inside of you. You recall dates and details. How has the Nakba continued to follow you, and has it shaped your life?
Diana, when you are a refugee among refugees, you feel a Nakba as a public event. All of us are in the same boat. Mm-hmm. For example, when I went back to Gaza in summer holidays, I went there regularly whenever I have a holiday. I, of course, saw many of my family who became refugees in Gaza. So were the population of 247 villages in southern Palestine, whose land was almost 50% of Palestine. They were crammed in Gaza Strip, which is 1% of Palestine. And when they moved there, the bond between families and villages made them actually move to refugee camps en masse. Here is an area where people of Bureir were, or people of Fallujah were, and they still have their muhtars, they still have their families intact, and they moved en masse socially and familiar-wise. They were intact. They were only removed geographically from one location. And I remember I was friends with an American professor at the American University of Cairo. I took him to see refugees in Gaza, and he was amazed. He is professor of sociology. He was amazed. I said, "Why are you amazed?" He said, "I just came from Greece and Europe at the Second World War, and I saw so many communities devastated by the war, and they were broken into pieces. But when I came here, I saw Palestinians, they were all united. There was no juvenile delinquency, as I saw in Europe many times. And people are so much tied up to their home to the extent that women, in their very simple abode in the refugee camps, they planted vegetables and trees resembling what they were planting in their village." Mm-hmm. So that struck me as something which I hope we still maintain today, that they stole away our geography, but our history, our bond remains.
You've not only made this part of your life's work, but you've written extensively about it, and we very much appreciate your writings on this. I want to end with just one final question, asking you whether you have a particular memory of Palestine before 1948. Much of our discussion has been now about 48 and the events of 48, and of course, mapping your return. Is there something that you remember about your life before 1948? We would love to hear about it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Our village, Salman Abu Sitta, is 55,000 dunams belonging to one family, Abu Sitta. They were then 1,000 people. Now we are about 10,000 people. But I remember as a child running around in the fields, especially in the winter time, and I see these green wheat fields spreading over hills and meadows. In the springtime, The red flowers we call hannoon is spreading all over the scape. I used to run in the fields and the wind swept my face, delighted to see my land. The shepherds were going around with their sheep, and the farmers planting, or in the early summer they are collecting the fruits, batik and melon and grapes and so on. But you moved around in a fairly large area, 6 by 8 kilometers. You find your family, your people. It was peaceful. We were masters of our destiny. But I must say, when my father, who was a distinguished man in the community, used to come from Beersheba or Gaza or Jerusalem, bring the newspapers, we see dark clouds in the future. What is going to happen? I just want to conclude by saying we don't only demand the right of return. We not only, as some people say, we dream about right of return. No. We actually plan for the right of return. And the return, we will.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salman Abu Sitta, for sharing with us and for all the work that you continue to do, not just to plan and map out your return, but to map out the return of others as well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Diana, for having me. It's very nice to be with you today.
For more information on Dr. Salman Abu Sitta's work, please visit the Palestine Land Society at www.plands.org, or you can read one of his numerous books, including my favorite, Mapping My Return. Thank you for listening to This is Palestine, a podcast brought to you by the Institute for Middle East Understanding. The IMEU is a nonprofit focused on giving you access to untold stories, facts, and expert sources on all things Palestine. For more information, please visit our website at www.imeu.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the IMEU. Please don't forget to subscribe. I'm Diana Buttu. Thanks for listening.